Welcome back to No Sleep Till on Reier on YouTube. It is Travis Reier. It is Evan Reier. It is a Thursday, August the 8th, 2024. And Evan, we have the preseason opener upon us here in Duval. The world effing champs, Kansas City Chiefs, set to descend upon Everbank Stadium Saturday night. Going to be fun, I think, because we've heard from both coaches, Andy Reid and Doug Peterson, some old pals, some old acquaintances, that they're going to let those first team offenses go for maybe a quarter and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think NFL teams and NFL fan bases are still figuring out this kind of brave new world of three preseason games, right? So, I mean, last year you were seeing teams do different kind of approaches throughout it. I think you're going to see it, continuing going forward. People are still figuring it out. So, I'm definitely not going to complain about getting to see, starters as early as possible. We'll see what they both pull out. I wouldn't be surprised if we get, kind of a mix and match and maybe even like some half and half week to week. Certain guys might play week one, but they're not going to play week two and vice versa. But hey, I mean, I'm just happy we have football. We have football to
Absolutely.
watch.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the kind of matchup that's enough to bring Taylor Swift back from Europe just for Saturday night. I'm going to guess she isn't going to go to that extent for the Chiefs and Jags in what is essentially week one of the preseason. But you're right. It's a lot of fun. Should be a very good crowd. You never know about the weather this time of year between heat, thunderstorms, those type of things. Hopefully it'll kind of leave us alone. But very much looking forward to that. And as a part of that, it's also time to talk about, Evan, where this team is at in terms of its formation as we look ahead to the 2024 season and understanding, it is 2 weeks into this and we still have a month basically until the regular season opener. So still some ground to cover. I talked
Yeah.
about this on the show yesterday. Didn't want to go to too many extents to read too much into the depth chart that we received in advance of this preseason opener. But I did want to get some thoughts from you as we move through that. And, we'll start with a concern that you've been consistent with for this team, and that's the offensive line. And I guess one of the problems you have right now, too, is you don't have availability that you would like
Yeah.
from Anton Harrison and Ezra Cleveland and some of those important pieces.
No, it's we've overall it's still been a, I would say a relatively fortunate off season injury wise for the Jaguars, but the kind of flurry of injuries that happened to the offensive line over the past couple weeks is not ideal. Granted, they do seem like that they're all things that should be wrapped up by the time the regular season rolls around. But I mentioned in the past that I appreciate the fact that one, they didn't do any sweeping wholesale changes. I mean, really, Mitch Morse is the only truly new presence on this line, but you still want to get reps as a unit. Even the guys that have played together last year and the years prior to that, you want everybody out there as a group. So definitely not ideal, but I mean, overall, but when we're not considering the injury situation, I would say everything you're hearing about the offensive line is pretty positive. I mean, you're seeing good stuff from Anton Harrison. Mitch Morse seems to look the part. Ezra Cleveland was looking good as well before getting injured. So I mean, I would say the temperature is warm in a good way, but it's also still one of those things where it's like, well, we kind of have to wait and see to see how significant these injuries are.
Yeah, I went out earlier today to the Thursday practice, which was essentially kind of like I think a Friday practice because the Jags do have a game Saturday night, and it was good to see Anton Harrison working through concussion protocol, actually doing some on grass work as a part of that recovery. So we did see that from the big right tackle. Still didn't see Ezra Cleveland out there. Blake Hance getting some run with that first team offensive line at a guard position. Also, Cooper Hodges coming back from his latest injury here in recent days as a depth provider potentially. And you think about the 53 man down the road, and they're going to keep probably 8 guys, I would think, 5 starters, 3 reserves. How does that potentially play out? We start to get some maybe partial answers at least to that coming up with these preseason games. And the tackle position, though, even with Harrison in that protocol, you still feel pretty good about it because you got Walker Little that you can plug in there. You had Cam out for a little while. So to your point, not the consistency that you would like, but the silver lining in it all is that it doesn't seem to be anything that's going to keep these top line guys out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to monitor, especially, with concussions and stuff. We always kind of, I think people do take those more seriously now than they ever have, but that can be a running thing, one thing leading into another. And, generally they seem to kind of come in bunches and things like that. So definitely keeping my eye close on Anton as he recovers.
Yeah, also on the offensive side of the ball, I think one of the fascinating things has been the quarterback position, not so much the starter, because we know you don't pay Trevor Lawrence what the Jaguars paid him. If you have questions about that, he is obviously the guy, the face of the franchise. But the situation behind him, we did hear from Doug Peterson, or we heard from the Jaguars here in the last day or so, that it will be CJ Beathard second against the Chiefs, followed by Mac Jones. I wouldn't put a ton into that.
Yeah.
From what I've been able to see, especially in Wednesday's practice, it looked like Mac was getting a lot of work. That was probably by design. But I think Mac Jones is sort of under the radar, had an excellent training camp to this point, and Trevor has as well. I think it's been a good addition in a number of ways with Mac Jones, not just in terms of bolstering your depth at the position, but I don't think he's so far behind Trevor as a quarterback that he can't push Trevor on a daily basis. I think there's some healthy competition going on there. Although, again, we all know who the clear cut starter is.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that really, when Mac was first arriving in Jacksonville, we said, okay, well, this is more proper competition for someone like Trevor. And we've talked about that personality, that energy that he brings. It's definitely been noticeable. And yeah, like you said, there's nothing to really be put in, CJ being second behind Trevor for the game against the Chiefs, because in the official depth chart release, Mac is still second on the depth chart as well. So even though CJ will probably go out first, I mean, the depth chart that was released on August 6th is still saying Mac is number 2. So I think we know what's kind of going on there. I think, and that's, I mean, honestly, not just vibes, not just kind of measuring them up based on careers and different stuff. Like you said, Mac has had an excellent training camp. I mean, he definitely just looks like he's a guy that you really want as your guy pushing your main quarterback. But also, Mac has the experience that if he needs to step in at some point this year, I feel like Jaguars fans can at least feel confident that we still have a chance to win the game with Mac Jones at quarterback.
Yeah, I think regardless of how this shakes out and how the Jags go about attempting to manage the situation with 3 quarterbacks, I do think CJ Beathard is a very legitimate backup option still in the National Football League. But I also think Mac Jones is still at a point in his career where it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's a starter again in the
Yeah.
National Football League in 2025. And it's pretty cool, too. You go out to practices, post practice. Mac's obviously a Jacksonville guy, but he's got his fans out there. Obviously, Trevor is besieged by fans, but it's kind of funny today seeing and hearing from fans just yelling Mac Jones's name after practice. He's got that. He's got that vibe to him that seems to be attractive to fans. And then you think about depth too at the wide receiver and running back positions. Again, areas where you feel like you understand who the frontline guys are. Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver, and then running back with Travis Etienne. I think Tank Bigsby is very solid in that role as the number 2. But then again, depth at wide receiver and running back some interesting things to keep an eye on here as we get into full on preseason action.
Absolutely. Now, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. The Jaguars made a signing less than an hour ago. I just was wondering if we could bring this up, but breaking news, but you're going to see this a day later. Breeland Speaks signing with the Jags, reigning UFL Defensive Player of the Year. So, dude balled out this past spring. So
I
just
think they
calling that
may
out.
have brought him in for a tryout even today, and perhaps went ahead and made that signing. So interesting stuff, Ev, on the defensive side.
Yeah, former second round pick by the Chiefs in 2018. Won a Super Bowl, won that first one that they won with Andy Reid. And yeah, last year was a Defensive Player of the Year, led the UFL in sacks, all UFL teams. So who knows? That could be something. I'm wondering, was there anything that when you were out there today? I mean, was there anything
Well,
you saw? Like,
Deshaun Dixon, the one defensive end, just recently tore his ACL,
oh,
or
bingo.
had a knee injury, and he's out for the season.
And
So
Gotsis also just got released. So
Gotsis was released. I think we're going to talk about this in a minute when we get over the
yeah,
defensive
sorry.
side, but kind of just some depth that we've talked about at edge. Once you get beyond Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker, Trevis Gibson, they obviously brought in a veteran that I think will probably be in that rotation as an edge defender, but they're not leaving any rocks unturned. And we'll talk more about Speaks in just a little bit. But back to wide receiver, and again, depth, how that's going to play out, at some point down the road, depending on how many wide receivers the Jaguars keep, because you got Parker Washington, you got Devin Duvernay, you've got Elijah Cooks, who I think has done some nice things. There's a lot of intrigue, a lot of fan interest about Joshua Cephas. You've got Seth Williams. There's a lot of guys in that mix right now, but only so many you can keep.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough decision. I mean, you didn't even mention Tim Jones. I mean, that's a guy
Yeah.
that the Jaguars clearly, like after keeping around last year. It's a nice problem to have. I mean, it's not one that the Jaguars necessarily had a ton in years past. Even last year, while there was, definitely a myriad of options and some talented players, it kind of felt like filling out that last spot was more of like, well, we have to more than we have to make a decision. So no, it's definitely encouraging. I mean, when I was out at practice, the one day I was there, obviously, you've been there a lot more. The guy that stood out to me the most that day is Duvernay, and I keep seemingly hearing that he's having a really good camp. So that's exciting. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like Cephas has been hyped up even before training camp really started, but everything that I've heard about him has been positive too. So it's definitely an interesting group.
Yeah, special teams will impact that, obviously, in terms of the ultimate finalists that make this 53-man roster. But there is quality options. I think the practice squad is an area where you would probably like to stick maybe one or two of these guys if you possibly can at some point down the road as well. As far as running back, we talked about Travis. Bigsby, I think, has had a really good camp, has done some very nice things. And then you get into Dearness Johnson. And I've been really impressed. A guy I've talked about a good bit here of late, Jalen Jackson, the undrafted free agent that has done some nice things. And I like him because he's a little bit different than, say, Travis and Tank and Dearness, in that he is a squat, kind of thicker, small, stout back, but he has
Yeah.
exceptional short space quickness. And he's also shown an ability to catch the football, contested catches, and also a guy that, again, special teams, he looks like he could maybe help out there. So if they keep four backs, they recently let Lorenzo Lingard go. They've made some changes, brought in some different guys here in the last few days. But I would feel good about Jackson being a fourth back if that's the way it goes.
No, I think you kind of need, like you said, it's got to kind of check off some special teams boxes. It's got to check off several different things, and he just seems like a guy that one is doing that, but also does provide something a little bit different than what they've already got in ETN, Bigsby, and Duranish Johnson. Um, it's interesting too because I feel like back in the back in late April, early May, people were kind of trying to get on the Keelan Robinson train, but it kind of seems like that has just slowed down a bit.
He's had
I
the injury. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
been tough for him. Yeah.
So no, I mean, but it's next. It's one person's kind of unfortunate accident can be another person's opportunity, and it seems like Jalen Jackson is taking his chance.
He really has capitalized on that opportunity, I think. And obviously, Keelan's healthy. That changes the dynamic. But
Right,
even Keelan is more of what those first three backs give you.
right.
So, it could be that even with Keelan, if he sticks or makes this roster, which I don't think they're going to move away from Keelan Robinson. I think, if anything, they've probably been impressed that with a toe injury, he's continued to do his very best to get on the field. It's just been an unfortunate situation because you also have to factor Keelan into the return game, obviously.
Yeah,
But Jalen Jackson could maybe do some of that as well. I think it's a good situation because as much as anything, Bigsby looks like he's taken that step that he needed to. Again, we'll find out more now that we get in these preseason games, and then you're going to, I think, have some tough decisions to make when you're looking at that fourth back between about five different guys right now. So a good situation there as well. Tight end, it looks like it's probably going to be more the same from a year ago, at least right now. They've had a couple of injuries at the tight end position, including Josh Peterson, Doug's son, Patrick Murtaugh, the Australian, a gruesome ankle injury a week or so ago. He's out. But you kind of figured Evan Ingram, Luke Farrell, Brenton Strange, those were going to be the three obvious guys.
yeah. This has kind of been the least surprising, I guess, of all the position groups throughout training camp. I mean, it's been very, very straightforward with that core three, and that's kind of fine. I mean, Evan Ingram is one of the most important weapons on this offense, and then Luke Farrell, obviously, very good blocker, very solid at getting that stuff done, and Brenton Strange is just a guy that you're continuing to hopefully you find it with him. He develops into something that close to where you drafted him. But yeah, it's pretty like I was saying, straightforward. There's I've really, I mean, honestly, I've barely seen much chatter at all about Sean Bowman or Chris Mayarick. So no, nothing on those dudes. It just is what it is.
It is. Yeah, and I think Brenton Strange has shown some signs. I was concerned after the couple of first 3 days or so that wow. But I think like the rest of the offense, it seems like once the pads came on, that's when he sort of came on as well and has been pretty
Right.
consistent from that point forward. Let's move over to the defensive side. Let's talk about that defensive line because again, depth looks to be a friend of the Jaguars right now. You got a healthy Devon Hamilton. They've mixed in some different guys to go along with him with Eric Armstead out right now. We saw Roy Robertson Harris in there today earlier. Perhaps he's going to be out there first Saturday night to go along with Devon. Obviously, on the edges with Josh and Trayvon. It's a good situation, though, because even beyond those first line guys, and again, you think about Armstead at some point here as you go into the regular season, uh, some very, very interesting options there up front.
Yeah, no, I mean it's coming together nicely, and then you're starting to hear these things about Mason Smith, looking good, especially in the run game. And I had talked about, I think back in coming up to the draft, that I was kind of worried about the nose tackle position. I think now, with Devon Hamilton looking healthy, looking back to where we want him, and then you also have not just, one option behind him. You kind of got a few different dudes between Tyler Lacey and Jeremiah Ledbetter and Jordan Jefferson. I definitely feel better about that spot. And then, the defensive end spots are, kind of what they were throughout the offseason, which is, man, I like our top two. Figuring out the guys behind that is going to be a big deal for the Jaguars. If Breland Speaks turns out to be a guy, that'd be awesome. Not having Deshaun Dixon is noticeable. And then, what is Trevis Gibson going to be able to provide in this situation is definitely a big question on that defensive line as well.
Yeah, the Gotsis move was, I think, kind of surprising, I would say,
Yeah,
especially for Adam himself. But again, when you look at, as I talked about yesterday, some of the things that they feel like they got done via the draft too here in the last couple of years with Smith, with Jefferson, with Lacey, it starts to show up, and kind of a little bit of a switch in scheme too. Sometimes that can impact certain guys. Are they
for sure.
tweeners? Maybe they're more of a tweener in this approach than they were in the previous defense. So you have to take those things into account as well. But we talk about the linebacker positions. That's been interesting. We've seen Chad Muma out there a good bit at the strong side linebacker position in the base. Also, we've seen him work inside as more of a depth provider. But obviously, Foye, Aluakun, and Devin Lloyd, another guy I think that's legitimately taken another step. Very, very solid in that front seven to go along with that front. And then depth there, Ventrell Miller, you're just trying to keep him healthy as best you can. The poor guy, now he's got a club on one hand, and he had a hamstring a couple of weeks ago, but he is a guy that he's doing everything he can to practice on a daily basis. Caleb Johnson's a guy who made the 53 last year. So the depth looks pretty good. And I think, with Devin Lloyd, you're going to have some versatility too, to do some different things maybe with that group.
Yeah, I think both with Devin Lloyd and with Muma, you ideally have kind of a plug and play scenario where either guy should be able to have a skill set to provide for that situation at whatever point. So if it's not Muma, it's Lloyd and vice versa. Something interesting on that depth chart, that August 6th depth chart that we got. Muma is it's a Muma or Lloyd situation at the will, and then it's a Muma or Abdullah situation at the Sam. So Muma's kind of first name mentioned for both spots. So definitely plan on seeing him a lot early on on Saturday when the Jags play the Chiefs, and curious to see exactly how big of a role he's going to have. I mean, we've been, asking, over the past couple of years, when or how does he kind of break into a larger role there? And it hasn't happened. I mean, as you said, a scheme change, needing that third linebacker a little bit more often, is something that could get Muma on the field quite a bit.
Yeah. In this defense, your edges and Walker and Hines Allen, they're considered more ends
Yeah.
than sort of hybrids that will drop into coverage and do those kind of things like they were asked to do previously. So your linebackers right now are really linebackers. And when you look
Yeah.
at weak side and Mike especially, those are really interchangeable. So I think even depending on formation, motions, those type of things pre-snap, you really need to be able to play either spot. And I think Devin is at that point. Foye to me is just better between the numbers. Ideally, he can survive in space if he has to, but that's, to me, that's Devin Lloyd's gravy. That's his. He can cover, he can run, and Foye obviously is the green dot. I mean, he's running the show from that inside position as well, making the checks initially. But as much as anything, seeing Devin just really locked in and understanding what's going on is a big improvement over his rookie season a couple of years ago. And I'll tell you this too, Ev, in some obvious passing situations, and this is something we really haven't seen out at practices yet, when they go dime and they go with their premier pass rush guys on the field together, I wouldn't have a problem kicking Devin Lloyd out to the edge and moving Trayvon Walker inside, and then having Hines Allen on the other side with Eric Armstead out there in a pass rush look. So I just think with Devin, it's kind of endless, the different things um, you can potentially do with him.
Yeah, I mean it's very clear that just athletically, I mean he's as versatile as a guy you can find in the NFL, really, and if he's starting to see the game better, as you said, if he's starting to kind of feel more mature, feel like it's more his speed, then he ought to be able to do other stuff. I mean, kind of in the same vein as I think there's a very real chance that we see that a good bit this year. Because just the other day, Ryan Nielsen, it might have even been yesterday specifically, but Ryan Nielsen was saying that he was saying this same stuff we're saying about Devin Lloyd, but about Chad Muma. He was saying, we think he can line up, kind of off the edge. He can put his hand in the ground. He can do all that different stuff. So I would not be surprised if we see a lot of weird stuff, kind of linebackers coming in and out. Yasir Abdullah has also done that in his career as well. So you've got, a lot of different stuff going on there. And I think, mixing up, getting a little creative with those blitz packages and kind of what you're showing offenses is critical now. Offenses have never gotten more, kind of tricky, creative, complex with their play calling. I think it only makes sense to return the favor on defense.
Yeah, I still think Travis Gibson's in that mix on the edge too.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of getting your best 11 on the field in third down, especially, I got to think that's the priority. Muma, I really like as a base player. I think he's fine at that strong side linebacker position to go along with Foye and Devin Lloyd. And when they go to nickel, he'll come off, and
Right.
the slot corner will come on for the strong side linebacker, and presuming that's Chad Muma. And speaking of that secondary, man, it just feels like from the open of camp to this preseason opener, it's pretty much been the same 4 or 5 guys. It's been Tyson Campbell, Ronald Darby at the corners. You had the injury to Wingard, so that's changed things a little bit with Antonio Johnson there at that safety opposite Andre Cisco. And then there at the slot corner, it's been Darnell Savage. Now, Christian Braswell's been very impressive at times at that position as well. We've seen Jarian Jones, the rookie, play some corner, play inside. They recently brought in a veteran at the safety position in Adrian Amos. So, that's something to take into account there. I think the biggest concern you have right now, if you're the Jags, is that inexperience at safety opposite Andre Cisco, especially since you're opening with an offense like Miami's, and you better have your stuff jam up and jelly tight, because that offense and that brain trust down in South Florida, they're going to have some stuff ready for you on the back end.
For sure. It does make me wonder if the Jags are kind of having a bit of a internal race to see, maybe Savage is a guy that, if push comes to shove, if we get to week 1, it's like, well, we have to start him at safety because we need, that kind of stability back there. Instead, at corner, maybe we do, do we feel good enough about Braswell to kind of be the corner, the nickel corner? Or do we feel good enough about Jarian Jones to do that? It's unclear. Obviously, I think they want to start Savage at the nickel corner if they can really get what they want. But then it's do you feel good enough about do you do Antonio Johnson on the other side, or do you potentially go for maybe? I mean, I guess Terrell Edmonds. I mean, not really sure what you do there other than Johnson. So if you're not feeling good about that duo of Cisco and Johnson up there, I mean, it kind of seems like Savage is the only legitimate option.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for Antonio Johnson right now, because if he can prove trustworthy, he's got all the skills and ability that you want. If he can hold things down and not bust, I think he's got a great shot to be that guy. But that's where the Chiefs on Saturday night could really help you in that evaluation
Yeah.
of those guys, because at least for a quarter or so, you expect to be challenged like no other team, even the Dolphins, can present to you
Yeah.
down the road. I think the secondary, I think there's a lot of promise back there. I think at corner, especially, they're going to cut some good players. They're going to release some NFL capable type of players, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Trey Prince, the rookie out of Ole Miss, has really done some good things as well as a cover corner. He is still kind of in that processing stage in terms of knowing what it takes to probably be a pro day in and day out, but his ability is undeniable. So
Right.
it's probably, we look at areas of this football team at this point and say ahead of schedule, behind schedule. I'd say the secondary as a whole, even with the injury to Dewey, is ahead of schedule.
Yeah. No. It's. I would say I agree. I think. Yeah, man, it's just tough because, like, the grass is always greener, but at the same time, it's they do have questions to answer now with that, and it's funny how literally just one injury. I think when Dewey got injured, I remember thinking, well, it could be worse. Well, now it definitely could be, but at the same time, you're kind of feeling a little bit more pressure, just that injury alone on figuring things out.
Yeah. So still some time. Hopefully Dewey gets back sooner rather than later. It might be a push to think that he's not only just cleared, but also at a
100%.
level that you're going to need to
Yeah.
be at for what could be a track meet down there with the Dolphins in week 1. And then,
For sure.
we think about the dime package. We really haven't seen much of that again. And that kind of relates to the pass rush too, that we were talking about earlier. I've seen anyway, very little of that at the workouts I've attended. I've seen guys like Terrell Edmonds work up there at the dime. Darnell Savage, we know, can do it. It's another area where Antonio Johnson's versatility could help you. So those are some of the blanks that maybe we'll see some of that starting more on Saturday night in an actual game situation. Uh, Teams tend to keep it pretty vanilla though, and the dime of all the packages in my experience is the one that defensive coaches, their pass rush stuff and all that, they like to keep as close to the vest in the preseason as they possibly can. Everything else they're kind of, it seems like, okay with. What about special teams for the Jaguars? Obviously Logan Cook back, a veteran at the punter spot. Boy, Cam Little has been one of the big stories of this preseason. The draft pick out of Arkansas to this point has validated that selection there in the 6th round. And, you think about some of these return options: Parker Washington, Devin Duvernay, Jamal Agnew no longer around. What do you think about that area of the special teams?
I think you got to feel good. I mean, like you said, Cam Little has kind of been a story of training camp, and it's exciting to see him, not just doing well, but seemingly people have nothing but good things to say about his personality and his vibes that he's bringing. Uh, Logan Cook, I mean, not his best season ever last year, but still, I mean, I would consider him one of the better punters in the NFL, and Matzik is the dude. He's the All Pro. And then Duvernay is kind of the punt returner, kick returner. Like that a lot. I mean, he was always exciting and seemed dangerous when he was in Baltimore. And then having Washington and Bigsby as your backups both feel like really sure-handed options. Both those guys that at least as things stand, Bigsby. When it comes to, I don't know if it was bad luck or just a lack of focus or whatever, but the interceptions and fumbles last year was definitely a talking point. I like to think that what I've seen and what everyone has said is that he's definitely looking like he's a bit more surefire this time around. And so happy to see him back there. And then same thing with Parker Washington, a guy that definitely seems trustworthy if for some reason Duvernay is injured or can't go.
So many things to talk about, and again, still a long way to go. So when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about depth chart and we talk about scenarios, you got to understand there is still a lot that can happen here in the coming days and weeks. With that being said, with this game on Saturday night, what's the thing at the top? What's the item at the top of your to-do list for the Jaguars in this matchup with the Chiefs?
That's a good question. Top of my to-do list. I think it's like play a clean game. I know that's a very like generic whatever thing, but I really, especially from the first team offense, don't want to see like a lot of penalties. Don't want to see Trevor hitting the ground at any point. Nothing of the sorts in that regard. It's fine if the offense doesn't go down and score 2 touchdowns in 2 possessions. I can live, but just nothing dumb. Look like that you are, at least getting it together in terms of preparations for the season. And I'll throw out for the defense. I want to see the pass rush start to show its teeth a little bit. Like I want to see that. I want to see how Hines Allen and Walker are kind of getting off, and also seeing what other stuff we might be getting out of that. If Devin Lloyd and Moom are supposed to be these kind of versatile additional options for rushing the passer, let's see that. I know you can't pull out the whole bag right now, but I still want to see some of that in action.
Yeah, I think if you see some pass rush or some disruptiveness from the Jaguars in that regard, that's going to be a real positive, because I don't think it's going to be schematically enhanced this
Mm-hmm.
week. I don't think Ryan Nielsen is going to really empty the pressure playbook.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
going to be organic type of pressure. It's going to be four guys just getting pressure. I don't envision them showing much in terms of pressure, either real or kind of stuff that they show and then they get out of. I agree. I think lines of scrimmage, man. I think both lines of scrimmage. I want to see the offensive line establish something in the run game. And then situational football, like you talked about too, not just in terms of Trevor as a veteran quarterback now managing that first team offense like you would expect, even in week one of the preseason. Red zone. How do they handle those situations? Can they convert when they do get some opportunities in that first quarter or so? And then, as much as anything, as it always is, stay healthy. That's always right there at the top of the to do list, especially where your front line guys are concerned. And Ev, no, you'll be tuned in. You'll be locked in to this matchup with the Chiefs. Look forward to it on Saturday night, and of course, we'll get together for some reaction once it's over in the day or so that follows.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to it. We've been waiting long enough, and it's about that time. And then yeah, Lord knows. I mean, it'll be regular season right behind that, and not to mention college football. I mean, it's all kicking up. And the Cons are also busy with Fulham too. Fulham's season starts in like less
Yep.
than 2 weeks, so we're it's about to be the best time of year. We're about to be in the September. It's gonna be great.
Absolutely. And it's always great to catch up with Ev here on No Sleep Till. If you haven't subscribed to our channel as of yet, we would certainly appreciate you doing that. Subscribe to Reier on YouTube. Hit that notification bell. That way you get all of our content as it drops. Also, if you wouldn't mind, a thumbs up for the fellas. A like would help us out tremendously as well. Everybody have a good time. If you're going to the game Saturday night, be safe. Enjoy it. It is here, as Evan said just a few moments ago. And we look forward to reconvening right here on NST very, very soon. So for Evan, I'm Travis. Thanks again. And until next time, so long, everybody.